Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Well, good morning and thanks for tuning in here on this Wednesday morning, the 27th of April. We want to thank you for joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Ryan Kalei Suji, joined by Yunji Denise. And Yunji, this morning we are speaking to not one, but two candidates for governor.
That's right. We have spoken to a number of candidates already on the Democratic side. This morning, we delve into the Republicans. We've spoken in the past, of course, to Heidi Suniyoshi, and now we talk to two gentlemen who are pursuing this office, Paul Morgan and Lynn Mariano. We're going to devote half of the show to each of them. We're going to start off with Lynn, who's joining us live from his campaign headquarters. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, aloha, Yunji and Ryan. Nice to be here.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. So let's start with the basics. For voters who have not had a chance to interact with you until now, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you've decided to run.
Like you, I grew up in Hawaii. I come from a large family with 4 brothers and 3 sisters. I started working at a young age to help family through financial hardship. From time to time, my family were on welfare, food stamps, and we had some medical care. Now, I have strong family values. I'm married to Jade for over 43 years. My wife is a retired civil service of 35 years. She's very successful. She's visually impaired, and she made me successful. And throughout my military career, I was always chosen to take on the tough jobs, short fuse, complex, unusual projects, often with limited resources, with equal ease because people trust me. Failure was never an option.
And so, I ask you as you head into this campaign on the GOP side, obviously the state has been run by Democrats for some time now. What is your path for this campaign? How do you see yourself prevailing, not only in the general, not only getting into the general, but making it beyond that?
Well, the current status quo hasn't been working for the last 6 decades. Hawaii is not affordable. Hawaii's been ranked the worst place to make a living 10 years in a row. Over a third of our local businesses have shut down since COVID, and our farming, agriculture, fishing industries, and local businesses are in a free fall. We continue to experience mass exodus of professionals in critical industries, because of lack of living wage and huge taxes. Wasteful spending and corruption are rampant. Our current laws and policies are simply not fair. Often our neighbors' islands are forgotten. The system is broken. It's evident that we need real leadership to guide Hawaii into future prosperity.
And so what specifically would you do differently than the current administration has done when it comes to handling something like the economy? We know that affordable housing is a huge issue. How would you manage that differently?
For affordable housing?
Affordable housing and the economy in general. I said affordable housing because you talked about just the high prices and the lack of housing. But how would you specifically tackle the economy in a way that would be different than what we're seeing now?
Okay. So on the economy, let me first start with affordable housing. For affordable housing, we need to change the paradigm. Affordable housing is really an illusion. It puts equity in pockets of international investors, property developers, and makes Hawaii Democratic Party the party of the international developer. We need to save money on developers, and take them out of the equations. And if we were to do that, we will save between 20 to 30% in costs. We don't need an equity partner. And if we do that, then we save another 10 to 12%. We need to restructure our financing so that it would be between 4 to 5%. We could build $800,000 homes for $300,000 to $400,000. The government can't just finance things 100%. We need to have them to guarantee the loans and limited profits. We can build between 10 to 20,000 homes per year, not only on Oahu, but also on our neighbor islands.
And so to just expand a little more on that, who do you see as being the primary principal for being in charge for building those types of homes and these affordable homes as you speak of, but to cover the costs and how does that happen?
Well, I've had an opportunity to talk to several developers, and one that I talked to most recently and talked about some of the ideas is Peter Savio.
Oh, sorry. We've had Peter on this program. He's got a lot of very interesting ideas. Do you support that idea that the government would step in and be the primary builder of housing? Some of the things that he's talked about even on this program.
Well, it will be a combination of both. You know, we need to bring in all the experts in the area, you know, stakeholders, set them down in a room, you know, really address the root cause of our problem. And then once we have that, we can find a solution in a phased approach so that we can't build everything at one time, but we need to build it for now, but also look into the future. So that's one of the things that I would kind of do. That's different.
And with regards, of course, affordable housing is just a piece of the puzzle. There is just the high cost of living in Hawaii and the price of paradise.
Yes.
What would be some of your plans and ideas to help bring that cost down?
Well, thank you. You know, our economy, you know, is really like it is. It's the economy. We need to make Hawaii affordable. We need to stop this wasteful spending. We need to increase tax credits and incentives. We need to abolish the GE tax, you know, particularly on food. We need to diversify our economy, not just depend on DOD or tourism. You know, we need to bring Hawaii lottery in. We need to modify the Jones Act to recognize Hawaii as a 58th state, because currently it's recognizing us as a territory. You know, such costs would save our individual buyers or locals, you know, $600 per year. Education, we need to pay teachers more. We can't afford to live here. We need to enable school choice. We need to stop the brain drain. You know, people are leaving Hawaii in droves. You know, our homeless problem has gotten worse and worse. Our aging infrastructure, last time we looked at that is 1960. You know, we need to look at repairing our roads, bridges, and schools, which would bring up competition. And we need to have, I believe, in a strong homeland defense and national security. You know, you can find out more about me, you know, on my website at marianoforgovernor.org.
You know, I did have a chance to look at your website, and one of the things, I mean, you just said a number of things in there that we could delve into, starting a lottery, abolishing the Jones Act. One of the other things that I saw on your page was to legalize and decriminalize marijuana. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, and just to be clear, on the Jones Act, I'm not saying that we abolish the Jones Act because we need the Jones Act in time of war. What I'm advocating for is working with our congressional leaders that we would modify the Jones Act to recognize Hawaii as the 50th state. That would drive competition, bring the cost down. Now, your question on medical marijuana. You know, currently Hawaii has been a leader in medical marijuana. We've got some laws in place, and you know, Hawaii's been leading that effort. But just recently, you know, the laws has been kind of lagging. Now, I've looked and I've done research on it. You know, I'm a retired military officer. I work for the federal government. I don't believe in drugs. I don't do drugs, except what's prescribed by my doctors. But one of the things we need to do is with medical marijuana, there's some rules and lessons learned from not only our state, but also other states, and see how they do these things. And then modify those things so that sometime in the future, if we can update that recreational marijuana under the common laws and we can regulate that, then what we need to do is we can bring in about $200 million a year. And then we can earmark that into education, reform, law enforcement. And we can also do other things, you know, with that funds.
You mentioned in that answer talking about working with the congressional delegation. Again,
Yes.
if elected into this seat, you would be a member of the Republican Party, having to work with what could potentially be Democrats who have held that seat for some time. Talk about how you plan to build that relationship with those, being that you could be a minority in a sea of Democrats. How do you build those relationships working with across the aisle?
Well, I've been preparing myself for this position of great responsibility for over 35 years. You know, I've had decades of proven leadership and management experience. You know, I'm a man of my word with moral principles. I'm not a professional politician, but I have experience to lead this great state. You know, I'm accountable, trusted, committed, and will be inclusive of all those that have been left behind. I will tell you that when I worked in Washington, D.C., over at the Pentagon, you know, I've worked across the aisles, you know, with Democrats and Republicans so that, you know, we could further some of the things that I did over at the Pentagon. And so by doing that, I think we can do that. You know, I served on the first neighborhood board under Frank Fossey. And then when I returned home, I joined the Ala Moana Kaka'ako Neighborhood Board. There I focus on the critical infrastructure and then see what the things we can do by hearing what the people said and then taking their concerns and moving that over. So I'm not averse, and I'm well structured, and I'm also easy to get along with. And when times get tough, I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves and make things happen, because I've done that all my years.
We have some comments coming in from people on Facebook, and I'm sure this is one that you face, any Republican faces in this state. Donald Trump is the standard bearer of the party at the moment. So the question is, does this candidate support Donald Trump?
Well, I believe in some of the things that Donald Trump brought in, and I think some of his policies were really sound for America. Now, some of his behavior and ethics, I don't believe that. But, I'm not focusing on so much on Donald Trump. My job here as governor is to work for you, the locals, because, again, we're being so far left behind that outside international investors are not doing things for us. And I'm just tired of doing that. I can't see every day when I talk to thousands of voters out there, they're so disgusted. They say they can't live here because it's not affordable.
Another topic or issue that the next governor will have to deal with is Red Hill, the relationships with the military. With your background and experience in coming from that area, what are your thoughts on Red Hill, and how would you handle the situation moving forward?
Well, I'll talk to you as a private citizen because of Red Hill. I don't think that we should just stop Red Hill altogether. It's a government issue. It's a Department of Defense issue. And the decision was made that they would to close it. I would focus on the people of Hawaii. The aquifers was there for years. Red Hill has been there since before World War II, and so when we started to build the developments around the area, Board of Water Supply and our elected officials should have stayed focused on that to ensure that there were crisis action plans that were put in place so that should there be a leak, we can go ahead and take care of it. Recently, this last incident at Red Hill is very tragic. Department of Defense took care of their family members, but our state legislature forgot about the local people. Red Hill is very key to our national defense and also homeland security. I would have a task force. And what if I was governor during that time frame? What I would have done was declare a local emergency, and then if it need be, then I would have raised it up for a presidential declaration and used the Stafford Act so that we could help our local people. It did not happen here, and so our local individuals and family members suffered. Another thing I would do, if I could, real quick, is, for example, the Department of Defense, they put their families in hotels. Our locals, stayed with families, and they sometimes overstayed their stay. I would have put the locals with this declaration, put them in hotels, and then I would have removed the state taxes, particularly in hotels, because this disaster was not due to their fault. But this is something that we can do to work at not only for now, but also into the future.
The next governor is going to be facing Red Hill as a major challenge. Another challenge is handling COVID-19, as it unfolds in the years to come. We don't know what the pandemic will bring us. We know that we're not out of the woods entirely yet. How do you feel about the statewide shutdowns that Ige put in place? How do you feel about mask mandates, vaccine mandates? Where do you stand on those issues?
Yeah, well, I'm not for mask mandates, and we need to immediately unmask our keikis, and we should make it optional. Additionally, vaccination should be options, just like the flu or other vaccinations between you and your doctor. 2 years ago, we didn't know what we didn't know in the beginning. And so the government had felt that it was necessary to protect the people. So they took some things that, tried to protect the people. Over where I work at, I took best practices from around the Department of Defense, and I developed a pandemic annex. And we put together a COVID plan for Department of Defense here in Hawaii. I have over 35 years of emergency management experience, something no other candidate running for governor has. I've experienced dealing with the unknown and coming up with innovative solutions. For example, 77% of our population had doubled their vaccination. 55% even had their boosters. along with the kapunas, the kapunas and those pre-existing medical conditions, was the priority, and we need to protect them throughout the entire pandemic. The state was grossly mismanaged, and a governor's emergency proclamation, they should have followed the law. After 60 days, they should have reviewed that, and not just continue to extend it. There should have been a review. Although the BA2 is contagious, that the Delta variant, the medical impact is not as severe. So you don't see that many hospital beds being filled up. So I would also kind of work with Department of Defense and also other medical professions to try to build hospital beds for Hawaii. We need to follow the science and take the politics out of the decisions. We need the science to tell us what we need to do, and that's only advice. As governor, I would make the decisions. Why are the KK still masked? I just don't understand that. We are now educated about this COVID. We need to get the individual liberties back. We need to rebuild our economy and make mask and vaccination optional.
All right. Well, unfortunately, our time with Lynn is up, but we want to thank you for being a part of this conversation, and looking forward to hearing more about your plans and seeing how the campaign unfolds in the months ahead. So thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Hey, Ryan, and Yen, thank you very much. Just would like to say I would like to have an opportunity to be invited back so I can tell you more about my plans. And if I could, I would like to tell the viewers where they can go on my website at marianoforgovernor.org. And please join me every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. I have an open town hall on Facebook Live. Come join me and ask me any questions. If the voters are serious about change in the destiny of Hawaii, then please join Team Mariano. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Aloha. Thank you for being here. Okay, we're going to get right to our next candidate, and that is Paul Morgan. He hails from Kailua Kona, and he is joining us now. Paul, thanks for being here.
Thanks very much. Aloha. Thanks for having me.
So let's start out with the basics. For people who have not met you up until this point, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you've decided to run.
Well, 2013, I arrived in Hawaii on the Big Island. And at that time, I was working as a football coach at Kamehameha Schools out in Keau. Eventually, I started working with the Department of Corrections as a correction officer. Eventually moved to Kona side, opened an insurance agency, hired some employees, continued to coach on the west side of the island at Kealakahe High School, and continued to be a part of my community. Also a board member of a healthcare center or system on the west side of the island. Long story short, grew up in Mississippi, born and raised. Had some talent, so I was afforded an opportunity to play some college football at Vanderbilt University. Played a couple years in the Arena Football League after that. Majored in human and organizational development from Vanderbilt University. Graduated in 4 years, and then after that, had the opportunity to see the world, and took an opportunity to do work in everything from child protective services, juvenile probation, adult probation. Pretty much working in the system in some jobs that most people would want to do. I worked as an ambulance driver once I completed my military training as a combat medic, and had the opportunity to see some of the worst things, and wanted to move forward with life and take those experiences and to have a better life.
Well, it sounds like, no doubt, you've done a lot during your careers in a span all across the country. But why have you decided to take this leap and decide to run for governor?
Well, it came down to I care, and just building up to the I care part. It's, watching the state, my home state now, of what's going on from the economy to corruption to all these, working in a facility, working in a prison where a lot of people don't have hope, but knowing that I'm in a position of being a resourceful person and having that type of spirit and attitude to bring people together. I want to utilize my skill sets to the fullest. So from that perspective, I talked with a lot of people who've known me from my childhood, including my family, my college coaches, my high school coaches, and just people who've known me from business to my family in Hawaii, to my Hanai family in Hawaii, to just a lot of people to ask their feedback on this opportunity to step out and be a leader as the governor of Hawaii. And all of that feedback was, yeah, Paul, yeah, you, more support. And that's what's happened. We've built a team locally. My chair, Monique DePons from Waimea, Sister Nicole Soon is our scheduler. My fiance is involved with the campaign as well. We have Adam Shakespeare, who's our vice chair, Trina Pack, who's communications, MJ Castillo, who's the campaign manager for Oahu, and Jose Felix, and just a group of people from across the state who I may be an outsider, but they're the insiders, and we're all saying the same thing as far as change, and I'm the guy to get the job done.
Let's talk about some of the issues. You know, we just discussed with Lynn a number of issues that are facing the state. As governor, what do you think is the biggest issue facing Hawaii, and what perspective do you bring that's different from the current leadership?
Well, my background as a business development consultant is systems and processes. So what we did was this: we created a focus study and just simply institutions that have data on what the constituents had already voiced as being the issues. So we created what's called Hawaii First Economic Recovery Plan, which addresses the first 100 days in office, which goes from reversing the mandates, rehiring people that lost their jobs, and considering all treatment options for COVID-19, and then opening the government from a transparent perspective, including my schedule as governor. So people know where I am, what I'm doing, and if they want to walk into the office and there's an available time, we can meet and talk story about these issues. So as far as opening the state, opening small businesses, and then collecting $25 from every person who's a non-resident of the state of Hawaii to help with low interest loans and matching grants for small businesses to help them recover their businesses. This is a measurable, realistic, and doable goal. Outside of that, it's the longer vision of creating industry around the issues of Hawaii, which starts with affordable housing, and then from there, healthcare, education, technology, and then utilizing the nonprofits, over 4,800 in the state of Hawaii, to continue to help address the local issues from A to Z or zero to the last number, and just actively on a daily basis, meeting with people and asking them about what they want, what it looks like for the sake of it keeps us in line with three values of not increasing the overhead of the state, not causing people to think they're going to lose their jobs, and doing what's in the best interest of the citizens of the state of Hawaii.
With the topic of affordable housing, we dove a little bit into that previously with Lynn, but what are your thoughts and plans for how to solve the affordable housing problem, which you mentioned is going to be a priority of yours?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also talking to some similar developers about their experiences and best practices in order to create a scale that's scalable, and just utilizing a pilot project or program first from USDA, which is a self-help housing program. And the fact that we're utilizing approximately 2% of the land in Hawaii, there's a tremendous opportunity to lower the overhead of utilizing DLNR land for these housing developments, and also considering Hawaiian homelands and cutting the red tape from that process so that the system flows so that people get into homes. So just building this out into best practices of what that looks like. If we don't utilize the space of land to build out, then there's an opportunity to build up and utilize just from a consistent permitting process across the state, those credits that developers are taking advantage of, to apply those to developers who want to work with us from a state perspective, to have developers come into a program like the DBES program to assume those credits so that we can get these housings built utilizing federal funding and state programs and funding as well.
You mentioned collecting $25 from non-residents and then transferring that to a pool of money that residents could use. Tell us a little bit more about that plan, how it would work. Would you collect that as people come in, they fly into the state? Tell us more about this $25
yes.
fee, if you will.
Yeah, so it's along the lines of, if you're familiar with federal programs, sometimes there's a grant matching part of the program. And usually it's it's a 25% in kind or cash or whatever. This would help facilitate those programs, and building a similar model. We would have then that monies or those monies to help those small businesses who are looking to start, manage, and grow their businesses. And just the fine tuning of this program, we call it Hawaii Made with our campaign. And what we do is we invite small businesses out to our campaign of pop-up events, so that we can listen to hear their stories and utilize system and processes to share best practices, so that these small businesses are getting the education sooner, so that we can build their businesses up, help export those businesses internationally, kind of like what's already been done to Hawaii, So the path of least resistance on the mainland and other places is through people who've been forced to leave or who had left Hawaii because of the cost of living to help grow those businesses locally and then have that money returned back to Hawaii.
And so that would be for those choosing to live in Hawaii, or would that be for visitors entering the state?
No, that would be similar along the lines of that residency program. So those Hawaii-owned, Hawaii-grown type businesses. So the first phase of it is Hawaii-made. So products, goods, and services. And just thinking head to toe, we have a lot of apparel, T-shirts, bumper stickers, those kind of things that can then be exported to the mainland and recovering that money back to Hawaii through small businesses. And then on the farming side, Hawaii grown is pretty much a similar concept, but it's utilizing land purchased by Hawaii small-owned businesses from the mainland because land is cheaper. Again, it's Hawaii-owned businesses being exported and that revenue being returned back to the state of Hawaii.
You are a Republican, as we noted off the top. Interested to know your position on former President Donald Trump. Are you a supporter of him? Would you support him should he decide to run again for president in 2024?
Well, I've never met him, but what I do support is his position on America First, which if you drill down into it all goes back to the economic model of supply side economics, which is why we're focusing on Hawaii First, Hawaii Made, Hawaii Grown, and just utilizing the best practices of anything that's going to work in the best interest of Hawaii to help lower our overhead, to cause people to think they're not going to lose their jobs, because we want to work with the unions to make sure that we want to expand this work and bring in more of their feedback and their insight, and then considering what's in the best interest of the citizens of Hawaii. So best practices.
When you look at Hawaii's political landscape, as we mentioned earlier, it is dominated by the Democrats. How do you see yourself working alongside what would be potentially a minority party in the Republicans? And if you were elected into the seat, leading the state amongst those who may view things differently than you do and your party affiliation?
Yeah, and that's okay. And what we're looking at is, what do we agree upon? Do we agree that Hawaii First economic recovery plan should be a priority? Do we agree that we should create sustainable industries around the issues of Hawaii? And do we agree that corruption needs to end? So by promoting that message and meeting people where they're at, literally at the bus stop, or you may hear some background noise, I'm just wherever I need to be to have those conversations, to engage people, to find out what they think as far as the state of Hawaii. So meeting people where they're at, we can disagree on a whole bunch of other different things, but drilling it down to foundationally, Hawaii should thrive. And that's the ultimate goal of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And just making those agreements, bottom line.
You did mention that you would pursue all treatment options for COVID-19. I want to drill down a little bit more into your position on COVID-19 mitigation. What are your thoughts on mask mandates, vaccine mandates, and how we manage the pandemic going forward?
Yes, I oppose, and within the first 100 days, had the mask mandate still been in effect. That would have been the first thing we would have done, is reverse the mask mandate, rehire those people that lost their jobs because of being forced vaccinated. And then considering all treatment options, including natural immunity, which I have natural immunity. And if you don't have the opportunity to go to the doctors to get the letter, then there's a simple test called a T-cell test that shows, it pretty much measures and shows if you've had contact or had the COVID. So with that, pivoting it to small businesses, there was and there is a tremendous opportunity for Hawaii small businesses. And starting back at the beginning of this thing, back in 2020, I'd approached with some other people who were interested in starting a business of mask manufacturing. And I was attempting to help them get that thing started. And long story short, top down, they shot it down, but the guy eventually moved forward with opening the plant. So that's along the lines of Hawaii First. So if there's going to be something going on that Hawaii, its own economy, can benefit from, that's what we're promoting, including the testing, including all of the other different avenues or aspects of let's play in the world, Hawaii. Let's play in the world.
Unfortunately, our time is wrapping up here, but I want to just let you have an opportunity. Any final thoughts as you speak this morning to those who may be considering your candidacy and to where they can learn more?
Yeah, you can go to our website, www.paulmorganforgovernor.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and yeah, pretty much all of the social media. It's all Paul Morgan for Governor on those different handles, except for Twitter, it's PM for Governor. I appreciate everyone's support. And if you have a voice, run for a Senate or House seat, and also volunteer with our campaign. And ultimately, it costs money to travel across the state at a moment's notice. So support our campaign financially. My name is Paul Morgan, running for Governor of Hawaii 2022. I appreciate your support. And thanks for the opportunity, guys.
We appreciate having you. Thank you so much, Paul Morgan, for joining us this morning.
Mahalo.
Great to hear from both of those candidates, Ryan. The wonderful thing about this program is that we have lots of time since we are on 3 days a week, and we really did want to hear from everyone in this race. And so that's why we extended the invitation to those two gentlemen. And as Lynn noted in there, we do hope to have him on again soon, both of them on again, if possible, as we head into the primary and then the general election. We do hear some key differences between them and the Democrats that are running, and of course those fall along party lines. Very pro-business, you heard there, against the mask mandates, both against any kind of vaccine mandates, and just a different approach when it comes to running the state.
And both have said that is sort of their campaign moving forward, is their campaign promise is trying to do things differently than what has been done in the past. Of course, this has been a state that has been controlled and dominated by the Democrats, and so these two GOP candidates looking to bring a different style of leadership, as they say, and a different type of way in which they believe would be best for the state moving forward. We look forward to continuing on as we have more discussions in this election season, including another conversation that we'll be having on Friday.
That's right. Sherry Minor McNamara, who is running for lieutenant governor, will be joining us. She, of course, is a native of Hilo, who now has been running the Chamber of Commerce here in Honolulu for a number of years. She has really built her campaign on a pro-small mom and pop business platform. So we'll be diving deeper into how the campaign is going with her. The lieutenant governor, it's a very interesting position because it has no formal powers, but it really depends on the person who holds the office. We've seen a number of different people over the years hold that office, and they really do shape it. So the next person, of course, will take that on as well. And we'll be talking to Sherry on Friday right here at 10:30. We do hope you'll join us then.
Thanks, and we'll see you then. Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.